For 16 years, there was one thing you could count on in the Brown family. No matter how heated the argument, no matter how cornered Kody got, no matter who was crying or yelling or storming off, Robyn stood beside him. She was the one wife who never broke ranks. The defender. The wife who always took his side. And then she sat down across from a tell-all host, the cameras rolling, and she said 7 words that nobody who has watched this show ever expected to hear from her mouth. She said she does not agree with the things that he does. So tonight, I want to talk about the moment Robyn Brown's loyalty finally cracked on live television. Because if you understand what that crack actually means, you understand that something has shifted in this family that can never shift back. Let me set the stage, because to feel the weight of this moment, you have to remember exactly who Robyn has been for the entire run of this show. From the day she joined the family, Robyn was Kody's most reliable ally. When the other wives pushed back, Robyn softened. When Kody made an unpopular decision, Robyn found a way to support it. When the family fractured, when Christine left and Janelle pulled away and Meri stepped back, Robyn stayed. And she didn't just stay physically, she stayed loyally. She was the wife who seemed to genuinely believe in Kody and the vision, even as everyone around her stopped believing. For 16 years, Robyn's defense of Kody was the one constant in a show full of change. And that's exactly why this moment lands the way it does. Because consistency is Robyn's whole identity in this family. She is the loyal one. So when the loyal one, the unshakable one, sits in front of a national audience and admits tearfully that she does not agree with the things her husband does, that's not a small comment. That's a fault line appearing in bedrock. It's the kind of thing that, the moment it happens, you know you just watched something change. The wife who built her entire role around supporting Kody just publicly acknowledged that she and Kody are not the united front she spent 16 years performing. Now, let me give you the moment in its actual context, because the framing matters. This came during the Season 20 tell-all, with Sukanya Krishnan asking the kind of pointed questions that previous interviewers often let slide. And in that environment, under that scrutiny, Robyn admitted through tears that she doesn't always agree with the things Kody does. Notice the tears. Notice that this wasn't a defiant, liberated declaration. It was an emotional, almost reluctant admission, pulled out of her in a moment of real vulnerability. That's important because it tells us this wasn't a strategic statement. This was something true slipping out past the guard she's kept up for 16 years. So the obvious question is, why now? Why, after all this time, does the crack appear at this specific moment? And I think the answer is everything. Because look at the landscape around Robyn right now. The other 3 wives are gone. The plural family that gave her loyalty its context and its purpose has dissolved. The audience has spent years souring on Kody, and now she's sitting in a tell-all where the other wives are openly airing their grievances, where Meri is talking about money she's owed, where the whole narrative is finally catching up to Kody. In that environment, maintaining the perfect, unbroken loyalty might have finally become impossible. The dam was held for 16 years. The pressure of this particular moment is what finally cracked it. Let me talk about what that crack actually reveals, because I think it's more profound than a single disagreement. For years, the fan consensus has been that Robyn and Kody operated as a unit, a team, the two who stood together while the others left. Robyn's admission punctures that image. It tells us that even inside the household that stayed, even in the marriage that survived, there is daylight. There is disagreement. There are things Kody does that his last remaining wife privately does not stand behind. And if that's true now, on camera, then how long has it been true off camera? How long has Robyn been quietly disagreeing while publicly defending? The crack doesn't just show us a current disagreement, it makes us reinterpret years of loyalty as possibly being, at least in part, a performance. And here's where I want to be careful and fair, because there are a couple of ways to read this, and I don't want to oversell one. The generous reading of Robyn is that this is growth, that she's a woman who is finally, after years of unconditional defense, allowing herself to be honest about the fact that her husband is a flawed human being she doesn't always agree with. In that reading, this is healthy. This is a person stepping out of the role of the perfect defender and into the role of an honest partner. And honestly, if that's what this is, good for her. It's healthier to acknowledge disagreement than to perform a unity that doesn't exist. But there's a second reading, and I'd be lying if I didn't put it on the table. The more cynical interpretation is that Robyn, reading the room, sensing which way the wind is blowing, is beginning to subtly distance herself from a sinking ship. The other wives left and are thriving. Kody's public image is in tatters. And here is Robyn, on a major special, gently establishing for the first time that she and Kody are not the same person. That his choices are his, not necessarily hers. Whether that's conscious or not, it has the effect of creating a little daylight between her and a husband the public has turned on. I'm not saying that's her intent, but it's worth noticing that the loyalty started cracking right around the time loyalty stopped being an asset. The truth, as it usually is probably somewhere in the middle. I suspect this is a genuine emotional moment and a sign of real shifts in how Robyn sees her position. People are complicated, and both things can be true at once. She can genuinely feel hurt and conflicted and be unconsciously responding to a changed landscape. What I'm confident about is that the crack is real, and that it represents a meaningful change in the one relationship everyone assumed was rock solid. Let me put this in the context of the bigger pattern, because this fits into something we've been tracking across this whole family. 3 wives looked at life with Kody and decided to leave. And now the 4th wife, the one who stayed, the one who never broke ranks, is publicly admitting she doesn't agree with the things he does. Do you see the trajectory? One by one, every woman in this family has moved from defending Kody to questioning him. Christine questioned and left. Janelle questioned and pulled back. Meri questioned and stepped away. And now Robyn, the last loyal one, is questioning too, even as she stays. The defenders are running out. Eventually, Kody may be the only person left who fully agrees with Kody. I want to talk about how lonely this must be for Robyn, because I think there's real pathos here. Imagine being the wife who stayed, who bet everything on this marriage and this man, who defended him when nobody else would. And now you're sitting in a tell-all surrounded by the wreckage of the family. And the truth is finally too heavy to keep performing. You love him, presumably. You chose him. You're still with him. And yet you have to sit there and admit, through tears, that you don't agree with what he does. That's the position of someone who is trapped between loyalty and honesty, between the role she's played and the truth she feels. There's nothing triumphant about that. It's just sad. It's the sound of a person who's tired of pretending marriage is something it isn't. And let's think about what this does to Kody, watching his last defender waver. For 16 years, Robyn's loyalty was the one thing Kody could always count on. When everyone else turned, she stayed. So to hear her, on national television, admit she disagrees with him has to register as a blow. Not a divorce, not an ultimatum, but a crack in the one foundation he thought was unshakable. If even Robyn is creating daylight, then Kody is more alone than he's ever been. The man who once had 4 wives now has one who's publicly acknowledging she doesn't always stand behind him. That's a profound shrinking of a person's world. Here's a question I keep turning over. Is this the beginning of Robyn waking up, or just a single honest moment that gets papered over by next season? Because there are 2 paths from here. In one, this crack widens. Robyn keeps allowing herself honesty, keeps acknowledging disagreement, and slowly becomes her own person rather than Kody's defender, maybe even following the path the other wives took. In the other, this was a one-time slip. A moment of tell-all vulnerability that gets sealed back up, and Robyn returns to the loyal role because it's the only role she knows. I genuinely don't know which way it goes, but the fact that the crack appeared at all means the possibility of the first path now exists, where before, it didn't. Let me address the fans for a second, because Robyn is a polarizing figure, and reactions to this are going to be all over the map. For the fans who have long disliked Robyn, this moment is satisfying, even vindicating, because it suggests the loyalty they always resented might have been thinner than it looked. For the fans who have felt some sympathy for Robyn, this moment is poignant, because it shows a woman struggling under the weight of a position that was never as comfortable as it appeared. And both reactions are valid. The beauty of a moment this genuine is that it's a Rorschach test. What you see in Robyn's crack says as much about how you've read her all along as it does about Robyn herself. What I'd push everyone to consider, though, is this. We spent years debating whether Robyn was the villain or the victim of this family. And maybe this moment suggests she was always something more complicated than either. Maybe she was a true believer who is slowly, painfully discovering that the thing she believed in doesn't hold up. Maybe the loyalty was real, and the disillusionment is also real, and we're watching the second slowly overtake the first in real time. That's not a villain arc or a victim arc. That's a human arc, and it might be the most interesting thing Robyn has ever given us. So when I step back and look at this crack in Robyn's loyalty, here's what I see. I see the last domino starting to wobble. I see the one constant in this family finally bending. I see a woman who built her identity around defending a man, beginning, however reluctantly, to admit that the man isn't always defensible. It may not lead anywhere dramatic, or it may be the first quiet sign that even the wife who stayed is starting to see what the wives who left saw long ago. Either way, 16 years of unbroken loyalty just developed its first visible crack on national television. And cracks, once they appear, have a way of spreading. Let me give you some texture on just how committed Robyn's defender role has been over the years, because without it, the crack doesn't fully land. Think back across the seasons. When tensions flared, Robyn was often the one in tears advocating for the family to stay together, for everyone to keep trying, for the vision to hold. When the other wives expressed doubts, Robyn was frequently positioned as the one who still believed. She was cast, and to a large extent presented herself, as the emotional heart of the family's commitment to the lifestyle. So her loyalty wasn't passive. It was active. She didn't just stand beside Kody quietly. She argued for him. She defended the dream. She fought to keep it alive. That's what makes the tell-all admission so seismic. The person who fought hardest to hold it all together just admitted she doesn't agree with the man at the center of it. And I think it's important to separate two things that often get blurred, because Robyn herself seems to be untangling them in real time. There's the lifestyle, the family, the vision she believed in. And then there's Kody, the actual man and his actual choices. For years, those two things were fused in Robyn's mind. To defend the dream was to defend Kody, and to defend Kody was to defend the dream. But what her admission suggests is that those two things may finally be coming apart for her. She can still love her family, still be committed to her marriage, and yet look at specific things Kody does and think, no, I don't agree with that. The fusing is breaking. And once a person learns to separate the man from the mission, they can never quite unseparate them again. Consider, too, what Robyn's own children are absorbing through all of this. Robyn has kids in that household. Kids who are watching their mother navigate a marriage to a man the rest of the family has largely left. Children are perceptive. If even Robyn is reaching a point where she can't fully defend Kody, you can be sure her kids have noticed the same thing she has. Maybe sooner. The crack in Robyn's loyalty isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening in a home with young people who are forming their own conclusions about their father. And a mother's honest disagreement, even a tearful one, gives those kids permission to be honest too. The crack may travel. There's a striking parallel here to Christine, and I think it's worth drawing out. Christine had her own moment of clarity, the point where she stopped trying to make the marriage work and admitted to herself that it wasn't going to. For Christine, that clarity led her out the door and into a far happier life. Now, I'm not saying Robyn's tell-all admission is the same as Christine's decision to leave. It's not, at least not yet, but it might be the same kind of moment, just earlier in the process. The first honest acknowledgement that something is wrong. For Christine, that acknowledgement was the beginning of the end. We'll see whether Robyn's is the beginning of anything, or whether she pulls back from the edge she just stepped toward. I keep coming back to the psychology of the true believer because I think that's really who Robyn has been, and it's the key to understanding her. True believers are the last to doubt, because doubt costs them the most. If you've organized your entire life, your marriage, your identity, your sense of purpose around a belief, then questioning that belief means questioning everything. That's why Robyn held on the longest. Not because she was foolish, but because she had the most invested. And that's also why her crack matters so much. When the true believer starts to doubt, you know the thing being believed in has really fundamentally failed. The skeptic's doubting is expected. The true believer doubting is the end of the religion. And there's something genuinely moving in watching that happen to a person, even a polarizing one. Disillusionment is painful. To slowly realize that the thing you defended, the man you championed, the dream you fought for, isn't what you thought it was, is one of the harder human experiences. If that's what Robyn is going through, then those tears at the tell-all weren't just about a disagreement. They were the tears of someone grieving the gap between what she believed and what turned out to be true. That's not a villain getting her comeuppance. That's a person reckoning with reality. And whatever you think of Robyn, that reckoning deserves to be seen with some compassion. So I want to be clear about why I think this single moment matters as much as I'm saying it does. It's not the words themselves. Plenty of spouses disagree with each other. It's who said them and what it took to get them out. It's the fact that the most loyal person in the entire family, the one who never wavered on national television, through tears, under questioning. In the architecture of this family, Robyn's loyalty was a load-bearing wall, and we just watched a crack run up the middle of it. Walls don't always fall when they crack, but you never look at them the same way again. And neither will we ever look at Robyn's loyalty the same way again. So I'll turn it over to you, because I really want your reading on this one. Do you think Robyn's admission is genuine growth? A woman finally being honest about her marriage? Or do you think it's the first sign of her quietly distancing herself from a sinking ship? And here's the bigger question I want answered in the comments. Do you think this crack widens from here? Or does Robyn go right back to defending Kody next season? Tell me where you land, because the perspectives on Robyn are always the most divided in this whole fandom, and I read every single comment. If you want me to track Robyn's loyalty arc from the very beginning to this moment, mapping exactly when the cracks started forming, let me know, and I'll build that next. And if you appreciate that we take even the most polarizing figure in this family seriously as a real, complicated human being, then do me a favor and subscribe, because nuance is what we do here. And there is so much more of this story still unfolding.